let's do this. Let's go for some of the parables of Christ, parables of Jesus, which is interesting. As soon as I say that, it's like, oh, this is, sounding almost like a mainstream church. He's going to talk about the parables of Jesus, but we're going to talk about the astrological parables of Jesus. Basically, parables are different than allegories and so on. Parables are what ancients taught. But parables, allegories, whatever the case may be, metaphor, this is the way ancients taught, but not anxious as in that's outdated. This is the way more right-brained people communicate. Left brain would be more linear, factual, and usually then it only has one point being made. With metaphors and allegories and so forth, and parables, it's kind of like, well, here's a concept. I love that word. I use it quite often, right? I wrote the book, A Course in Miracles, the 12 main concepts of A Course in Miracles. Because concepts mean, here's an idea, and then to you, on one day it might mean this, on another day it might mean that, and to different people it could mean something entirely different. So they're concepts, they're beautiful, they're expansive. So when it comes to the parables of Jesus, what we do know is that consciousness that he had, that Christ consciousness, was capable of seeing and hearing many levels at the same time, as well as teaching several layers at the same time. So even though he's giving these parables that seem like individual stories, they can all be grouped archetypally into one of the 12 zodiacal mindsets, human beings. So it's kind of nice. It's not like he said, this one's for Pisces. But usually the one related to Pisces would involve fish. The one for another sign would involve symbols or signs or whatnot, related to different signs of the zodiac. So it's kind of nice that these, pull together that way. Now, a good astrologer would tell you, about your sign of the zodiac. Here's what you're like. That's a good astrologer. A great astrologer would also be willing and capable of explaining that you're all the signs of the zodiac, right? Because just the more open, more broad consciousness. So technically, when I'm going to share these, and I'll do a couple biblical quotes here, but as I share these, remember all of them apply to you. So don't just wait for your sign. All of them apply. I remember, I've said this for years and years. There's people that kind of flip open. If you're old like me, you remember we used to have the TV guide. All right? If you don't know what that is, just go with it. We had what's called the TV guide. And in the TV guide, they often had the astrological forecasts for the month or the week or whatever. And it was kind of interesting because, you'd see people flip to it and they would either go, or, it's ink on paper and it seems to have this power over a holy child of God. It's the weirdest thing. But what I used to say to people, I remember in high school, I would joke, even then people would read these kinds of things. And I would say, why don't you just keep reading them until you find one you like? I like that one. Happy disposition this month. Instead of the one you read that you didn't like, then you're carrying this like vibe. Just, how are you not all of them? And in truth, we're beyond all of them. In God, we're beyond all definition, distinction, and limitations. But as we come into this universe, more the archetypal levels, God-goddess levels of consciousness, you're now going to be all the signs. Then when you come even lower in descending into matter, limiting consciousness, you start to become just one. And even then, you can drop a slight notch further to become the negative aspects of the sign. If you want to go further. Oh, there's that sign that, oh, you're them. Oh, God. I know from a minute ago I was feeling really a lot of love and connection, but not now. You're one of them. My ex was that. My dad was that. My mom. It's like now you rule them out, So those three main levels, beyond it all, one with them all, and then one of them. Make sense? And in the one of them, often people gravitate towards It's called the lower aspect of a sign, which is why your signs have at least two typical symbols, like the Sagittarian, the horse and the man. There's the human aspect and then the animal aspect. So the signs have that. Okay, so now that said, we'll start off with this concept of Aries. And I'll share some brief concepts or quotes. But for Aries, this was what they call the parable of the sheep and goats being separating them out. So Jesus says, Judgment Day is like the separation of sheep and goats. The king will come and say, come to you who are blessed, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you. And you'll recognize this. This parable is the one where he says, a king comes in and says, blessed are you. When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, you invited me, and I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, you looked after me. Remember that one? Mm-hmm. All right. This one is basically, the king says, truly I tell you, when you did these things for me, you did them for everybody. When you did them for others, you did it for me. Everything's connected. So when it's saying that, separating the sheep from the goat, it's saying one day you will hold yourself accountable and say, was I a good person? As an Aries, step up. Was I a good person? And, they even ask him, but Master, you're using this metaphor, this parable. You were thirsty. When were you thirsty? We don't remember giving you drink. We don't remember giving you food. We don't remember clothing you. Why are you telling us this story? So he goes on to say, well, you have to use these metaphors. Some things I will just tell you what they are if you're ready. But when I don't think you're ready, I'll sometimes have to use metaphors so that your childlike mind can wrap around, a story, instead of just letting you know exactly, because it's a bit beyond the human mind, some of these concepts. So they say to him, they're taking it literally and saying, when were you ever naked? He says, anytime you've ever been kind to anybody, you were reconnecting with Christ or God. Making sense? It's a really beautiful concept, right? Anytime you were, so now we have to, then there's the flip side of that story where he says, and when you rejected others, you rejected me. Now, is he talking just about Jesus? Well, not really. Technically, he's telling you, anytime you were loving, you awakened the Christ in you. Anytime you were unloving, you put the Christ to sleep. So, Aries, new beginnings. Time to say, this is my new route. It doesn't mean enable. It doesn't mean I got to be kind, and if somebody's being mean, I've got, it's not about enabling behaviors. So please don't overly, take it too seriously like that. But just, kindness. Do you tend to help when you see somebody in need? Do you tend to say, how can I be helpful? At least ask, how can I be helpful? If you're not guided to do something, that's okay. You didn't cause harm. You didn't do wrong. But did you even ask? How can I be helpful? And basically, if I don't know, I might hang back and wait to see if I feel guided. The next, Taurus. Taurus is kind of a simple one because that's where the rich man, young man, comes to Jesus and he's just kind of like, I'm wealthy. I inherited all kinds of money, man. I'm good to go. And people get really funky about this concept about wealth in the Bible and in Jesus' teachings. Jesus said, and wealthy and they're shallow and they're bad people. Blessed are the poor. This is all very convenient to say blessed are the poor, especially if you're broke. Blessed am I, because I'm broke. That's no. Peace and non-peace tells you where you're at in consciousness, not money, no money. You can have money and not be at peace. You cannot have money and not be at peace. So this is where the wealthy young man comes into the scene and he's like, I have everything. Isn't this wonderful? And then, Jesus, you seem kind of impressive. Got a lot of followers, and he's totally gloating. He's totally into his wealth. No offense to Taurians. It's just a metaphor of the Taurians. So he's like, I have all my material needs in place. And then he says, so just tell me, if I'm missing anything, what would it take for me to also have your wisdom? What would it take for me to enter the kingdom of heaven? Because I kind of have everything. So if I'm missing something, what would I need? And Jesus, what does Jesus say? Oh, let me think. I don't know. Maybe give away everything you own. And you know that at that moment, the poor guy. What? Oh, everything? And now, here it comes. But my father worked hard to have. My father gave this to me. I'm wealthy. I'm comfortable. Why would I want to lose and be in a horrible place in life? But I love that one, because my own students at times, when they push for something, they ask for something, you can just tell what they don't want to hear. You just know. It's so beautiful. It's just so beautiful to say, when you sense in friendships and students or to yourself, when you sense that they claim they want to do something greater in their lives and you know what their weak spot's going to be. I remember one time I was counseling a couple. They flew from elsewhere states to my place, and they wanted to stay with me for a couple of days and do like hardcore counseling. And I'm like, yeah, we'll see. So, they're like, oh yeah, we want to totally commit. And it was amazing because they had money. They flew in, we'll do this, and we're going to pay you lots of money, and we're going to have a weekend. Like, we get to hire Michael Mirdad for a weekend. Well, wait for it. This doesn't mean like I'm going to be at your beck and call like you think, because you're used to telling people what to do and buying them, so on. So we're doing the usual, and we're having, and they do the usual control trips, and they're, trying to control the session, trying to control our conversations. That went on for probably a day or two out of the 3 days. And I'm listening, and mind you, people that have a lot of power tend to go to a counselor and tell you what they want you to tell them. So I just listen, and I'm doing my best to navigate this. And then it happened, where I asked them separate, go to lunch, we're having lunch, okay, separately I'd like to talk to you guys. And I talked to them, and they're struggling, and there's tantrums occasionally, and so we're done. And I asked them both to come into the room. I said, now, would you like you to not speak for a few? I want to share something. I talked to you both privately, and as I was talking to you both, it came up that you don't want to work on the relationship anymore, and you're pretty much done. And you just see these faces. And they're looking at each other, because I didn't say which one it said it's over. Neither of them said it. I was just having a good time. So, because I went after the game playing. You're playing games with me. 1 minute you guys are, maybe we should just end it. Well, but I love you. And the drama and control trips went on and on. Finally I said, yeah, I was kind of surprised, but after talking to you both, I found out that one of you doesn't want to do it anymore. And they looked at each other. There's sadness, confusion, disdain, all these feelings. Went through it all, and I let them both go through all the emotions because it was the most real thing they had accomplished. And then, afterwards, I said, now, I let them set in with that because they had not actually gone anywhere that was real about their feelings inside, losing and keeping each other. All they did was play games on a surface level. So I landed that, let that set in, let them go through all their emotions. And then at some point, I said, now, in truth, neither of you said that. But I needed you to see that if it was true, you needed to go to that place instead of playing games to see if that was what you really wanted. And then after a few minutes, I remember the gal, I'm feeling like that was not honest. And she started a little speeches. I'm just feeling, and I don't care what you feel personally. This was where we were gonna go. If you don't like it, great. Then you'll leave and you'll be the same. You can go back to being the way you were. But this needed to be done. And I'm glad. And he really got it, and she got it on some levels as well. But Jesus tells this guy, he wasn't telling the guy, just like I wasn't telling them life is hopeless. He wasn't telling him, you cannot get into the kingdom. He went after his attachments. He was messing with him in a healthy, good way, a righteous way, really. But he was going after the guy's attachments. Now, that guy, in that moment, he breaks into experiencing himself, that guy, the rich man, the young guy. You follow what I mean by that? Everything that happened from that moment was him doing a self-inventory, him doing a processing. Whether he went, really? I had to do that. Or whether he went, I hate this teacher. Or wherever he went, it was him. All he was doing was experiencing himself. Okay? So, it's important. And with the, with the sign of Taurus, it's just a matter of where are your priorities? At the end of the day, where are your priorities? And it's not about having stuff, but the Taurian aspect that's really beautiful for us all is have your Christ, your God presence, and be okay with being comfortable. Right? Taurus is not extracted from the signs. It's in there for a reason. And it's to teach us. Have comforts. It's okay. Have things in place. It's all right to have a car. It's okay to have this and that. But not attached to it. Then we have Gemini. That's the rich man neglects the poor beggar. This is one of those almost like the Good Samaritan kind of story. But here we have the a rich man and a poor beggar. And it's interesting because Gemini symbolizes in this particular parable the need to have balance between wealth. So the Gemini is a lot like Libran in that there's this thing going on like this. But the Libran's going to be like, I'm trying to balance this. The Gemini is conflicted. And because Gemini ruled, Mercury is a very strong influence to the Gemini. And Mercury is the mind. So the mind is just a bit too active. So it's almost like I want to make up my mind a Libran and I can't make up my mind Gemini. It's called the warring twins. Now, in the afterlife, we're being told in this metaphor that today's decisions and actions are going to become what you are tomorrow. So be careful when you've got this indecision. The rich man, the poor man. Should I help this poor man or not? Watch, because all the thoughts that are going on, that warring twins is not created by the divine inside. The reason you have warring twins trying to decide, even if there's a homeless guy over at the market, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? Be careful. The very conflict is my mercurial part. It's my warring twins, that Gemini kind of quality in myself. So one of the great lessons for Gemini is, I don't want to decide which of my two decisions is right. And this is hard for the Gemini, because my mind is everything. Knowledge. I love knowledge. I love reading. But the Gemini has to learn, no I mean me or mine. No I mean me or mine. Put self aside and say, what is the answer? What is the divine right thing to do? Go for the one mind of God rather than either of the mind of the warring twins. The Cancerian is the prodigal son story, obviously family oriented, let's get along. So naturally it's going to be the prodigal son story. So there's that feeling of, I want to be with family, but the prodigal son, you and I, still wanders away. We wander away from goodness, from even integrity. The prodigal son had the potential to have everything because he's already rich. You and I are already plugged into God in the beginning, so everything's fine. But there was that nature. Once we decided to create, manufacture the ego, there was this, now that the ego is there, there's now a nature to wander off from God. Metaphorically, we do that from our parents. Some of them are definitely worthy of being wandered from, mind you. But the whole concept that I have to lose something. I have to lose my father's love, my mother's comfort, whatever the case may be. That's because we decided to create an ego and fall, as it were. So the Cancerian's saying, look, at the end there's a calling inside. Maybe I should go back. I remember seeing something recently where a guy was interviewed and he was like, and my dad did this and 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 this to me. It was horrible. But a friend of mine said, but you only have one family. You have to go back and just tell them you're sorry and tell them that, guys, I'm not into that gratuitous stuff at all. At all. See, to me, it's neither the right or wrong. If you're going to say to someone, an ex or a family member, if I'm going to say to Dad, who was horrible for years, instead of, Dad, you were inappropriate and hurt me for years, but I forgive you. You could be sending them a message that it's okay to do what they did. I like to educate. So what I would do is, inside my heart and soul, I have set the goal to be completely forgiving. So I'm okay in here, but out here where you are, the guy who did X, Y, and Z, I'm going to recommend that you somehow make amends within yourself. And so that you know that I'm not just whining and trying to get you to apologize to me, I'm going to tell you this. I'm already fine. You can amends, you can apologize or not. I'm okay either way. For your soul, you might want to do that. You might want to clear what happened. You might want to come out and talk about it, even if nobody's in the room, Dad, Mom, on your own. Just say, you know what, God, I can see that this happened and I admit it now. Maybe you're afraid to say it in front of other people. Just say it to God. Well, I don't believe in God. Then just say it to the ceiling. Because if you leave this life with it, it's not going to go well. See, I'm educating about what happened. I'm teaching without preaching at them. I'm making suggestions. So I don't believe in that gratuitous stuff, guys. I don't. Prodigal son was about the prodigal son owning, and it was beautiful, the humility. He comes home, and both the Buddhists and the Christians have a prodigal son story, and they're almost identical. Almost identical, which is brilliant, beautiful. But prodigal son comes back and says, you know what? I almost pushed love away, if not literally did. The prodigal son isn't a guy that's just good or bad. He's trying to avoid love. He left heaven. He had everything. All mythology is based on one mythological story called Sophia. And that's the story of the divine feminine that was in heaven and fell from grace. She wandered away and then became tainted and ashamed when she came to earth. So Sophia came to earth. That's the archetype of the human soul, not men or women. It's the archetype of the human soul. So this archetype came to earth. It's our soul, called female, but it's our soul. And Sophia came to earth, and then when she came here, she realized, my God, I'm abused. Next thing I know, because I'm abused, I have to cope with abuse. So now I'm drinking, smoking, doing whatever to cope with the pain I feel. And everything crashes. And at some point, her brother comes from heaven and says, I've come to help you come home. Her brother being Jesus in the story, but also it's Christ in all of us. So my soul falls, then the Christ in me descends from the heavens into the realm of the soul and the human plane, the earth plane, and explains to her what happened. And she, my soul, says, I'm ashamed now. The things I've done and the places I've been, it's horrible. The things I've done, I'm just my body, and I never got that virgin white dress wedding, and I never got the perfect first time, and I never got the ring, and my parents didn't raise me perfectly. Exactly, that's earth. But she's taking it personally, and she's starting to pick up coping mechanisms all along the way. And that never cured her. So when she passes away and has no more of the coping mechanisms, no more numbness, the alcohol's worn off, you go to the other side. You're not buzzed anymore. That's what hell is on an even more intense level than the earth plane. Because hell on earth, you can still drink to numb the effects of hell. When you die, you can't. And that's why people think hell is intense on the other side. Because you have no way of numbing yourself of all the darkness that you have to confront. Suddenly, my shame is suddenly, oh my God, I'm horrible. I'm so ashamed. Now you've entered hell. And on a more positive note, no. So the prodigal son, daughter of God seems to have gone somewhere. But you don't go anywhere. It's just within yourself, like the story I shared a moment ago. You're really only seeing yourself. And that couple I was talking to. So there's this descent, so to speak, into this realm of this quagmire of darkness, shame, guilt, whatever, pain. But the Christ, when allowed, descends into this plane and says, honey, let's go home. You're okay. Oh, you don't know what I've done. I actually know all of it. It only is true when you're on this side of the veil where things seem to happen. But you're as beautiful as you were on day one. And there's no other day but day one. You just dreamt. All you did was you were in heaven, you went to sleep and dreamt that you went some horrible place, that you were a horrible person, and that horrible things happened to you. But I'm here to say, honey, wake up. Everything's okay. And then Sophia, that divine feminine, the real concept of the divine feminine, gets to, because there's no gender on the other side. The divine masculine, the divine feminine is really just the human perspective or perception of a higher order of things. We're divine beings. There's no gender. But what seems to be the divine masculine comes in and says to the divine feminine, you are one with me. But you forgot who you are. Not because you're female. They're both the same. They're just the soul. And that's why in spirituality today, why finally the feminine literal gender voice had to come forward. Why there's so many more females in spiritual centers than there are males. There are exceptions. I said this many times. If you go to a UFO conference, there's more men than women. So ladies, if you're lonely, go to a UFO conference. Okay? But be careful, because most of them are aliens. But still, who knows? Pyramid conferences, probably more males. But in spiritual places, it's almost like when we separated and became souls and divided seemingly into a masculine, feminine race of people, it's really strange because the masculine, because of its assertive gender archetype or stereotype, said, I'm going to be the one who protects. Just like the mother says, I'm going to mother my children. But the man that protects starts to control. And the woman that's going to mother starts to smother. That's the negative when the human went too far. So the man that says, I'm going to protect, also started deciding what's okay to believe. And they created religions. But now spirituality has changed that. Women don't have to cloak themselves and stay in the foyer. That's what they had to do in the old days. They weren't permitted to enter the spiritual centers, which is why this has all taken so long to turn around and get back together. Keep half of us out. How can I become one, or how can I become whole? How can I become awakened with half of me left out of the spiritual building? So it makes no sense if you think about it. Anyway, so the Cancerian version, the prodigal son, it's not about you getting back with your family members and enabling their behaviors. You're going to go through what you're going to go through based on who you believe you are. You might need to tell family this or tell family that, but there's really a beautiful point where you realize, I'm going to just be what I'm telling them. When it's appropriate to drop a little hint here and there, no problem, when they can hear it. Now and then I'll even drop some they can't hear, but they won't know I'm even dropping them. That's stealthy. And that's spirituality. When you have to blast them with your version of what happened in the truth, you're still reacting. It's a natural stage, so do what you want to do. You'd be safer going to a counselor and blurting and blasting everything. You would. Than going to your family members. Because even if you're right, you'll shut them down and this will not heal. It's better if you take some of the edge off and you can walk into a family and say, here's what's going on. Even if it's the worst, most horrible stories, I don't have to detail it all. I can just say, here's what's going on. And they can say, no. Did I ask? I didn't ask for your opinion. Here's what's going on. Such and such has happened in this family for 3 generations. I'm aware of it. I'm not interested in attending family reunions anymore. If any of you would like to join me in this conversation or pursuit, I'd love to have you join me. If not, love all the same. Bye-bye. Just clarity. That's when you really know you've grown, when you don't have to say such and such, you just are. It's really, really beautiful. Leo. This is the king's marriage feast for his son. Now this is an interesting one, but a king calls for a feast and asks all these wealthy people, you know, all the well-to-do and the reputations are high, you know, everybody comes up, but he invites them, but they don't show up. You know, it's like, wow. You know, I was saying to somebody the other day, like, Sedona is a spiritual community, supposedly. And so when you have a spiritual event, usually, it happens everywhere a little bit, but in this town more, if you have a spiritual event, typically the people that attend there are going to attend your event. It's not like you can say, we're going to have the Sedona Summer Solstice Festival. You think everybody at Sedona would want to be there. No, if they're not hired as a speaker, they won't be there. And they'll tell all their friends not to go because they're not. Everybody's got their little clique, you know. So it's really strange. So this guy's saying, my son, we're all friends, right? All the wealthy, yes, we're all friends. Guess what? My son's getting married. You're all welcome. And they have other things to do. So it's like, wow, you know, hurt feelings and whatever. So he invites the less fortunate. But one of them shows up but fails to prepare. That's the main point of this. It's you invite all this is about spirituality too. Those who think they're spiritual are often not. So watch what this story is about. And again, this is the Leo part. Leo is a symbol, if their astrological symbols are drawn correctly. Some artists miss some of the details. Typically, the lion has a paw down and a paw up, which is, it's like a power and a strength, but a humility balance at the same time. If ever you've seen a lot of statuary of Buddha, one hand this way, one hand this way. Balance. I'm in heaven and earth at the same time. Okay? So with this story, he starts off, this is like if a spiritual person invites all the spiritual people in Sedona to come to a spiritual event, they don't show up. You would think they would. This guy would think all his well-to-do friends would show up, and they didn't. So then the next point of the story is, so I'll invite those who are in here spiritual, not in their heads, not legends in their own minds, but people that are actually, and I've said this often, the spiritual leaders, teachers, authors, they have a little something to say here and there. But they're not the people that are going to change the world. They're just talking and writing. It's the students that I believe, when I look out at all the people that watch this program, to me, these people are far more spiritual than most spiritual teachers I've ever met. And when there's an event happening, the spiritual leaders almost never show up. The students do, because the students are the ones that are assimilating and absorbing all the truth, and then they become that truth. So teachers often are still talking it, not being it. So that's the part of the story where I invited those who said they're worthy, they didn't show. So I invited the more humble, great, and they all showed up. The story could end there, but it added one more piece. Of the whole crowd of people that do show up, one of them didn't even bother getting prepared for a wonderful event. And so he's thrown out. And that third little moral of the story is that if you want to say you're all financially strapped, and you come to a financial workshop, a workshop about prosperity, I'm glad you all made it. Thank you. And there's one person there, let's just pretend we're all in this workshop, and one just keeps talking about, well, I don't know, Michael, money doesn't grow on trees. And I don't know, because my parents didn't have money, and I don't know, and you keep hearing that. That's the person who didn't prepare. They are running on old tapes. They showed up, but they're not ready for change. Got that one? They're not really ready. And, sad, unfortunate, everybody will get it in time, but they're not quite there yet. All right, Virgo, that's the parable of the wise and foolish virgins. this is an interesting one because these virgins are and you got to remember the style of things and traditions in those times. But these 10 virgins are being brought to the place of this wealthy guy, this king, whatever, royalty. And, is it going to be one? Is it going to be several? Is he going to accumulate all these new brides? So they all show up, but it's so weird because the king's gone. He's sleeping somewhere right now. He's resting. And, he'll be out soon. So the 10 virgins have to sit there being perfect. Perfect little virgins. And they're all waiting, for him to decide whether they're worthy, to meet him. And there's so many strange layers to this story, but they all fall asleep, which I think they should. But they all fall asleep. And then, upon awakening, half of them say, uh-oh, we blew it. We went to sleep. So we had these lamps that were burning that we could present as a flame of love to our betrothed or whatever it's going to be. And the lamps all went out. Now, they might have said, this is symbolic. It's probably where this relationship is going. I think I'll leave. But no, that's not the way tradition does it. So they're all in a panic. 5 of them run off to go get new oil to fill the lamps, so they cover up for the fact that they went to sleep and the lamps blew out. So, or burned up or whatever. So they run off and they're gone. The guy shows up and the 5 are accepted. The other 5 are pushed away. So in a way, this represents our 5 senses. And the burning out is a very interesting thing because it's the ones that try to go compensate and make up for and hide that what they did, they're the ones that end up left out. So it's kind of like describing our 5 senses when they're awakened and just humility. This is where I am. I have senses, excuse me, but I've got senses. My eyes still seem to work, tell me what I see. My ears tell me what I hear. That's because at least you're owning it. The lamps blew out, we're sorry. 5 senses in a humbled state, as opposed to the 5 that we try to cover up. That's Virgo. Libra is the builders who built upon rock and sand. This is a pretty evident one. Librans that build their homes upon rock that has too much air between each granule, called sand, those are going to crumble. So in this metaphor, this parable, we're hearing to the Librans within and the Librans here, when you want to build something new in your life, make sure it's on solid ground. Oh, it is. No, it isn't. Just the way you said that. It isn't. Oh, but it just feels like it is. It isn't. So, feet on the ground, solid, 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 solid. Just getting out of that hole, weighing things out. Yes, weigh things out. But weigh things out to say to yourself, does this feel stable? Does this feel grounded? Does this feel right? It's a very strange position to be in, which is why you're balancing all the time. Because it's a strange position to be in. What do I need today? Well, first of all, to not look up while you say that. Here. Ground, earth, do I feel the earth under my feet? And yet am I aware of this at the same time? So the balancing should not be compensatory for a Libran. The balancing should not be, okay, I went way over here, now I got to swing way over here. It should be right here in the heart, in the center. Right here. What's really right for me? What feels right for me? And especially because of the air, do I feel, well grounded? All right, good foundation, in other words. Scorpio, the barren fig tree. So this is the story where, I think I maybe even mentioned this in the last a service or two. Maybe it was on our Edenshire program or devotional weekend we just did. But the fig tree. This is a really trippy story because, and Jesus was walkingeth upon the land with thine apostleseth. And it's described Jesus was walking and the Lord said, I'm hungry. I think I'll go take a fig from the fig tree. He's the Lord, he knows everything, but he doesn't know there's no figs on the fig tree. So he goes over to the fig tree and how dareth thou fig tree that there is no fruit on thine vine branches? And then he curses, you fig tree. Die, fig tree. This is what the Bible says that he did. You worthless, you're dead to me. and the fig tree just, died. And then the apostles marveled, which means they're like, this guy's scary. Like, they marveled. Yeah, they marveled, all right. They're thinking, can I sneak away at night? Or when can I? Because I don't want to be shriveling up, and this is kind of the way it's described. And then you'll see like televangelists, and they'll come up with all kinds of brilliant theological ideas about the fig. Well, we think because tradition says, and fig trees, it's really not that complicated. If you're worthless, you're already dead. If you have no value, if you don't do anything, if you're not of service, you're already dead. If you have no fruit to bear, you're dead. So Jesus was only doing an efficient thing. Tree, beloved sweet tree, not sweet beloved tree, you have served very long. You have given fruit for animals and people alike. Beautifully done. And now you're old enough to where you're fighting to even bear one piece of fruit this year, or two pieces of whatever fruit. You're struggling, sweetheart. Go to sleep. That's what he said to the fig tree. Go to sleep. Let it go. Let it go. And the earth mother that is your mother, fig tree, she'll take you and help you to fall asleep. She'll take all the energy and good karma of what you are and what you were, and she'll absorb it, and she'll produce other fig trees with your energy. All that you are will be recycled in a good way. That's what happened. But he sped it along, in a sense. Now that's important for us to remember, guys. If you have a relationship that's fruitless, yeah. I'm not saying that you should say to your husband, shrivel up, man. I am cursing you because you're not bearing any fruit for me anymore in this relationship. I'm not saying you should say this to husbands and wives and partners, but I am saying in here you should have an aha. Like, wow, this job, they've been promising me a raise for 2 years, 3 years, and it's not happening. I don't want to hate them. I just want to say to the universe, if this is a tree that's no longer bearing fruit, I'm willing to go on. You see? There's a great biblical story where, the wisdom of Solomon and David at those times, where it was, brought to them, like concepts like this fig tree, or one simple story of there's this giant tree that falls over and it has all this fruit on it. And it's a giant tree, lots of wood in that tree. It falls over, but everybody knew this tree. It was like the biggest and fruit-bearing tree of all. It was, everybody knew of it in the area. A windstorm or whatever blew it over. It's now gone. And the people are like, so what are you going to do? Oh my God, you lost the big tree, beautiful tree. What are you going to do? Well, I'll pick the fruit, chop the wood, use it for firewood. That's it. They're trying to make it into something, some negative. You can't fix it. It already is gone. Let's put it to good use. It could be a car or anything. Sometimes, guys, just let it go. I always remember in the third Indiana Jones movie, The Last Crusade, I think it was, or the Holy Grail, the one of the Holy Grail, whatever. And there's a scene where Sean Connery, who just passed away 2 days ago, really cool, cool guy, cool soul. But Sean Connery is the dad of Indiana Jones. And Indiana Jones is having to choose between the treasure in the movie and his life. Dad, and he's falling or whatever. And there's a scene where he goes, let it go, Junior. And so I always remember that. Anytime when I was parenting my kids, and they're like, but I'd go, let it go, Junior. I don't know if they knew what I was talking about, but it became a funny line that I would use. Let it go, Junior. Sometimes they would even say it in like an accent of his voice, but I still don't think they understood. Based on our life together, no. I'm kidding. They're good people. So then comes Sagittarius. Now the story for Sagittarius is called The Wheat and the Weeds. Now in The Wheat and the Weeds, you have basically a guy who's trying to sow these seeds. Somebody else comes along and is sowing weeds around all the good seeds that he's throwing down. So one person's putting down these good seeds, another's throwing seeds of weeds along with them. So This is amazing because the Sagittarian is that symbol of high ideals. So this is a great reminder, guys. Your ego is always dropping the seeds of weeds into anything you do. It's not like you go, oh, I'm going to go into recovery. That's a good thing. So weeds can't touch me there. Oh, yeah, they can. They actually can. Everybody in the program and in the room devoting for 50 years and 30 years of sobriety, 10 years, they're still human. They still have weeds growing. They're still ego. You come into a spiritual center. You could have a board of 20 people running the largest spiritual church or whatever on the planet. You have 20 egos also in the same room. So the Sagittarian's trying for the high ideals. I'm going to plant good seeds, man. I'm going to bring good to the world. I'm going to be of service. I'm going to tithe. I'm going to do good. Still, the ego is the one following every step, tossing seeds of weeds down. That makes us feel very much like unfairly treated in this world. The Sagittarian can often exclaim, why me, or what's going on? Well, I'm doing good. And they are. They're high aspirations, like that Libran concept. It's not like this. Its balance would be here. A little bit of awareness up, a little down, and definitely right here and now. The Sagittarian high ideals. Be careful not to get your heart broken. Instead, remind yourself, isn't this ironic? That as I keep my high aspirations, there's a rattlesnake biting at my heels. Remind yourselves. Be patient. Don't discredit the good that you're trying to bring to the world with those high aspirations. All right. We have Capricorn. Capricorn's a really cool one to think about. This is the parable of the sower. Now, similar to the last one, a gardener drops some seeds along the road or garden, let's say. And then there's birds that come along and pick them up. Then some of them, unfortunately, fall upon weeds, and the weeds choke them out. And then some fall upon rocky places, and the sun scorches the seeds and burns them. So this is yes, it's Capricorn, but it's any of us. We throw good seeds, just like the Sag did. We throw good seeds down, but in this case, 3 places they go. And they're very much chakra related. The first, the root chakra, animals come along and pick them up. And so I want to plant some good seeds. That's my good heart, Capricorn. My good heart. But root chakra, the birds come and take the seeds. My root chakra destroys some of the good that I'm trying to plant. Then there's the weeds that choke them out, because some of them land amongst weeds. That's the emotional center. My emotional self that's like weeds that try to strangle everything that I do in my life. The third chakra, fire chakra, that's where they fall upon rock and the sun scorches them. So again, I'm trying to do all this good in the world, and dang, if it doesn't happen, that my 3 lower chakras, the main resting place of my ego, the living place of my ego, destroys them, very much like the Sag. We have Aquarius. To me, the Aquarian part of the story is pretty cool too, because this is the Good Samaritan. All right? This is a guy on a trip from Jerusalem to Jericho. He's overcome by robbers and beat up and stripped down and, burglarized and whatever, they robbed rather, and they take everything from him. So everyone, including priests, walk by and say, the guy's not worthy. So, there's one guy though, he's a Samaritan. Now, Sumeria was considered a lower place amongst people that were practicing, the high principles of the religion of the area. So to them, it was like Samaritans are heathens. They're like the Gentiles. They're unworthy. So it's great that Jesus uses a Samaritan in the story, because he's telling us, once again, where you think somebody's unworthy, you'll find somebody worthy everywhere. This guy, the unworthy place, and yet the Good Samaritan's the only one who showed up. So even as he's sharing a parable, he's offending the egos of some of these uppity high priests who are going to say, go ahead, tell us that the high priest is going to save the day. No, The priest would even walk on the opposite side of the road so they wouldn't have to look at this guy who's all disheveled. Arrogance. That's snootiness. All right? Spiritual snobbery, I call it. But the Good Samaritan sees it, and then the Good Samaritan goes to an inn and says, look, here's some money of what I have. Take care of this guy. This will cover his lodging, food, and everything till he's brought back to, health. So in this story, there are, once again, it's a story about those of us who think we're spiritual, the priests that walk on by. It challenges us to be of good service, though. And there's some other deeper parts that I can't get into right now of why Jesus even used the Samaritan as the symbol of the hero of the story. But the Aquarian has to commit acts of humility. The Aquarian can often say, I know. It's kind of an interesting thing because you'll actually, if you know Aquarians, if you know 10 of them, let's say, at least 6 or 7 of them, you'll probably hear that as a common phrase. Well, I know. Because there's this, I know everything. You need humility because the key phrase also for the Aquarian is humanitarianism, right? So the Aquarian's I'm going to help this person. Instead of I'm above, I'm going to help this person. And I also want to get to, Pisces at the end of the story here, because Pisces is the parable as to, and this is kind of cool, as to why his apostles were not required to fast regularly. So what's happening is Jesus, John the Baptist, their cousins, they're living in the same region, and John's disciples are mourning. John's a bit intense and serious about spiritual practices and so on. So his disciples are very kind of stoic and so on as well. So when it comes to the later time of John's life, some of the apostles of John are looking at Jesus's apostles and they're going, how come your apostles are like up and happy? You're supposed to be serious about spirituality. That's the difference between old school and new school spirituality, by the way. And so Jesus doesn't put up with that. He says, there's nothing wrong with my apostles being happy. John represents the old school, and that was a time when you guys wanted to be serious, and go be serious. My apostles feel something. They can tell something wonderful is happening in my presence, my coming to the world. And so you know what? They're happy. They're happy. So it's right for them to celebrate. There will come a time when I go and they're going to be sad and scared too. But right now it's right that they celebrate. Make sense? It's right that they celebrate. It's right that they be happy. And I remember, and he also actually tells them 3 things. I'll come back to that. But I remember, for example, first time I went to Egypt and did a sacred sites tour with people. I mean, we went and had all these amazing experiences and meditation in the Great Pyramid, the Great King's Chamber and all that. But it was so incredible. Like, there's a lot of us that come out of marriages that might have been a little bit stoic and we're looking to come to life, or we come out of our parents' home and we're looking for, oh my God, I get to feel alive. Or when you come out of school at one level and you go out into the world. For me, I went to the sacred sites trip and I was just feeling high. But I was married and she didn't like me being so happy. It's the weirdest thing. She's a decent person, but she felt left out. And there was this whole, knock it off and how dare you? And oh my God, guys, it devastated me. This is in the mid 80s, 1980s. And it was so oh my God, why would you not be happy that I'm happy? Because misery loves company. And so when you start to feel alive and wow. And Pisces, it's the calling in of the new age. It's the ending of the whole astrological group cycle of the signs. So Pisces is also the symbol of the Christ. So it's here we go, I get to come out. No. Now, even though she was inappropriate and all kinds of other words you could put to it for shutting me down, they're taking away my voice. She's suppressing me, because people say those kinds of things. she was also me. Yeah. Reflections of the way I used to be. Sorry. But she was a reflection of me. I had to say, Satan, get behind me. Not to her, but yeah, no, that would have gone really well. But guys, when you're awakening something beautiful and those other voices come into the picture, you've got to be willing to say, wait a second, what's this? And instead of, how dare they, which is what we often do in this world, most of us don't do anything. We shut down and just get beat up by those voices. But when we do speak up, we swing the other extreme and go overboard. How dare you? You know, you're taking away my voice. You're suppressing me. That's a normal reaction, but still a reaction. In the center, oh, I totally get it. They're me. They're me asking, are you really worthy of happiness? What does this remind you of? Parents, totally. I had to be careful, man, going home as a kid. If I was happy, someone was going after it. They were. Somebody, consciously or subconsciously, it was not okay. If you're happy, there must be jobs to do in the yard, or there must be, it was like that. So I got used to just, moping, or so that make them think I'm really miserable. Then I might survive another day. That's how it was. So now I've got a wife doing that. And I have to realize, wait a minute, this is the calling of every one of us, our soul. Are you worthy to be happy? And if you are, you're allowed to say to the world, whomever's involved, guess what? The coolest thing just happened. I realized I'm worthy of being happy. Would you like to join me in that? If not, the greatest thing, I'll do it on my own. Parents, I'm happy. Well, you're not allowed to be happy because you're divorced. You got to look miserable. Like when you exit a main relationship, an intense relationship. Yeah, guys, sometimes your partners will look at you like, how dare you be happy? You've got to be able to say no. It's very, very interesting. So I'm going to close with these last simple couple of points. In the Pisces is the parable of new wine in old wineskins. It's a Pisces. Liquor had to be involved, okay? They say Pisces drink like a fish. So, just little astrological humor. So first Jesus tells him it's right that those guys mourn. He tells him that first. Second, he makes a reference, don't try to patch an old garment with a new piece of cloth. And third, don't put new skin on old wineskins, or new wine in old wineskins. His point is, there's an old way and a new way. They both have value. Try not to force new thoughts onto old systems or old belief systems. Okay? Because what he says, new wine and old wine, it'll burst. So the same thing will happen if you try to overly push or overly emphasize your ideas onto people, even spiritually. Well, you need to do this, it's too much. Old wineskins. If you really, really want to embrace all these concepts, all the signs, and bring the most positive attributes or aspects of all of them, it's much more stealthy than you can imagine. It's tactful. It's never forcing, it's tactful. So, we covered them all, right? Yes. Okay. We're going to just take a couple minutes of silence before we do our closing song. If you don't mind, please, a centering couple of breaths. I am on the inhale, relaxed on the exhale, just centering. Well, and in the spirit of the parables, let's try one on for size while we're quiet inside. There's a parable that tells of a great nobleman who went away to a faraway country to claim his kingdom. Before he left, he called his servants to him and gave each a specific number of talents or coins, dollars, to hold in trust. Gave all the servants talents, coins, money, prosperity, gifts. When he returned, he called them all to the present and said, bring the money I entrusted with you and tell me how you're doing with it. The first servant pleased his master by showing he had invested and doubled his money. The same was true for the second servant. The third servant, however, confessed he was afraid to invest the money, so he buried it in the earth for safekeeping. For this, the servant was reprimanded. Now, Jesus explains that when we're given gifts, not just money, gifts, intuition, nurturer, artist, poet, friend, protector, any and all of our gifts, it's our duty to use them. Otherwise, we will lose them. This not only applies to money, but to everything. Even lessons we've learned in life. If we bury our head in the sand and fail to learn our lessons, our soul is reprimanded. So take a minute to contemplate your own talents. Think about this. If you have talents, gifts of any kind, musical and otherwise, prosperity, health, fitness, just open your mind and ask yourself, are there any that you have put to good spiritual use, of service, helpful to others in any way? Give that just a half a minute. Any that you find, be sure to give thanks that you made a good choice. The ones you did, share and put to good use. Place at least one, if not both, hands on your heart just to give thanks to yourself. You must be a pretty good person to have shared your talents, your gifts. Beautiful. Own it. Take another minute now. Talents that you have that you buried. Talents that you buried. Guys, the talent could be a sparkle in your eyes, a beautiful smile you have, a green thumb, any gift or talent that you have. Don't do the overly humble thing and act like you have none. See any gifts and talents that you have that you did not yet share. Did you bury your head in the sand? Did you bury the gift and hide it away? Were you stingy with funds, money that you have? Do you have numerous cars? Artistic skills? Are you great with children currently, but not bringing it to the world in some way? Do you love animals, yet you do nothing for them? Try to go with the strongest gifts and talents at this, the most obvious ones. And they are the ones you haven't brought forward. Just own it. Put a hand or two to your heart and have your own conversation for the next 30 seconds or so, starting with, I'm sorry. It's not that you did anything wrong to us, to yourself. What was I thinking? I'm so sorry. You had something to give and share, and I buried you. I buried you, hid you away. Please forgive me. I love you. And I'm committing to at least entertaining the idea of finding a way to bring this out. And so it is. Beautiful. The light of God surrounds us.
We are the light of God.
The love of God enfolds us.
We are the love of God.
The power of God protects us.
We are the power of God.
And the presence of God watches over us.
We are the presence of God.
Wherever we go, God is, I am, we are, and so it is. God bless. We'll see you all soon.